Rick, I'm a little surprised that you didn't introduce me as Reverend Robert. My feelings are a little hurt. Jerica had told him to, and then you guys would have been like, ooh, guest speaker, who's this? And then you're like, oh, it's the Mountain Dew guy. Great. But don't worry, because I have some food facts for you as well this morning. I can't disappoint my loyal patrons. But we're going to be in the book of John, chapter 1, verse 43 today. I'm not getting there right now, but I know a lot of you like to plan ahead. So John chapter 1, verse 43. While you turn there, I will tell you my food facts because I feel like this is just what we do now. There is a new flavor of Mountain Dew. It's called Dirty Mountain Dew. It's cream soda and Mountain Dew mixed together. It's not great. I love that. Iris, was that you? Yes! Iris knows ball. Let's go. For those of you that couldn't hear, she goes, that's disgusting. Y'all, it's not great. I love cream soda and I love Mountain Dew, but putting them together does not elevate the experience. And if you have seen one on the shelf and you're like, I should try that, I've got like 5 left in the fridge in my office that I will not drink. So just let me know after service. I can hook you up. But also, I found a really good burger place. If you're in the mood for a good burger after church, my dad and I went there a few weeks ago. It's called Just Burgers. It's in Northeast Oklahoma City. If the weather's nice, you should go. If not, prepare to eat in your car because you walk into this tiny little like shed. And all it is room to order and a kitchen. And then all the seating is just like picnic tables outside. But a burger, like a good, like hearty burger, $4.75. And it's like $5.25 if you want to add cheese to it, which I would recommend. And there's really no reason for me to tell you any of that, except for the fact that I have the microphone and nobody can tell me no. Which is interesting because I kind of do like to be told no a little bit, not in the sense of like, no, you're not allowed to do this thing, but in the sense of like, it can't be done that way, or like that will never work. The way that people say no like that, it fires me up. And it's been like that since I was a little kid. I don't really know why, but I love it when somebody's like, that's not going to work. Your plan is bad. And I just say, okay. And there was one time when I was in high school. It's my junior trip. We went to NASA down in Houston. And we're like touring the facility, like getting to see all the stuff. It was super cool. If you've never got to go, Junior Bobby thought it was awesome. So anyways, take that for what it's worth. But we're sitting in one of these little breakout rooms. And the whole goal is like they give us a box of like Lego parts and motors. They're like, design your own moon rover that's going to pick up some rocks and deliver it to this other place. And so we've got these little motors, these Legos, and we're each building our own thing. And the lady that's kind of hosting, she's been doing it for, I don't know what she said, like 5 or 10 years. She'd been there for a while. And she's walking around kind of checking on all the people, making sure that like it's going well. Oh, you're doing so great. Oh, that's super cool. And then she gets to mine and she kind of stops and looks at it and she goes, that's not going to work. And my friends next to me are like, like they're cracking up. And I just looked at her and I said, thanks. And then I went back to what I was doing and I didn't change a single thing. And then we get to the end of the build time and she's like, all right, like it's time for everybody to showcase their robots. And guess whose robot worked? Mine. And she goes, I've never seen it done like that. And I said, thank you. And that might be, I don't know, kind of a little bit of the pride in me creeping out, but I thought it was hilarious. But even like whenever I first started at Summit, there was a similar moment. Because when I came on staff, like I just snooped everywhere. I opened every door I could get open. Some of them I stuck my driver's license into to like unlock because I didn't have a key to them yet. Jay, sorry. But I was just like snooping around to see what I could find. I found some cool lights that we used in youth for a while. Actually still use them. But I walked back into this space, and I put a picture of it because I took a picture of it a long time ago. And so I walked back into this room and I said, this space is really cool. And a couple weeks later, Jared and I are walking back there. He was doing like online campus pastor. He was over all of our online stuff at that time. We walked through there and I said, this is going to be a youth room one day. And he goes, good luck. Because, and I say that as a joke because I know he's going to come back and watch this online because he's supporting his wife at the marathon this morning. And so he supported me. I'm looking right at you right now, Jared. You supported me through this whole process. But in that moment, he said, that's never going to happen, man. Like, I love the idea. I love the vision. I love the intentionality. But there are way too many pieces that have to move for this to happen, because that was our children's resource area. It was where the school stored a bunch of stuff. It was where just other things had gone to be forgotten. Just to the left of that picture was like all the coffee makers and things. And it was just, there were so many pieces that had to move for that to be a youth room. And what's wonderful is you can go to the next picture now. That's what that room looks like now, which is the lounge. That's where we do youth every week. Because as soon as he said, that'll never happen, I said, okay. You're cute, Jared. But I mean, he is. I didn't tell him that, though. But hey. But it's funny. And like I said, he championed me the whole time. He helped make that entire project happen. He encouraged me through it all, and all the pieces that needed to move. Like he helped navigate all of those changes with me. And the reason that he gave that initial pushback is because he knew how hard it would be for everyone to embrace the necessary change to make that space what it could be. And it wasn't because he didn't believe in the vision or thought it was a bad idea. He just said, man, change is hard. And there's a lot of things that we've done for years that are going to have to change for this room to become what it could be. And I think that's something that we can all get on board with. Like, change is hard. It's difficult, it's scary, and it's a lot to process. But change is one of the only constants in life. Like, that's, as soon as you're comfortable, you're like, this is where we need to stay. Change will just sweep in. And so what do we do as believers? How should we process change? As people, how do we process change? And that's kind of what we're going to be jumping into in the book of John, chapter 1, verse 43. So we're going to go ahead and jump in right there. We pick up where Jay left off last week. John chapter 1, verse 43 and following says this. The next day, Jesus decided to leave for Galilee. Finding Philip, he said to him, "Follow me." Philip, like Andrew and Peter, was from the town of Bethsaida. Philip found Nathanael and told him, "We have found the one Moses wrote about in the law, and about whom the prophets also wrote, Jesus of Nazareth, son of Joseph." "Nazareth? Can anything good come from there?" Nathanael asked. "Come and see," said Philip. When Jesus saw Nathanael approaching, he said of him, "Here is a true Israelite in whom there is nothing false." "How do you know me?" Nathanael asked. Jesus answered, "I saw you while you were still under the fig tree before Philip called you." Then Nathanael declared, "Rabbi, you are the Son of God. You are the King of Israel." Jesus said, "You believe because I told you I saw you under the fig tree. You shall see greater things than that." Then he added, "I tell you the truth. You shall see heaven open and the angels of God ascending and descending on the Son of Man." And I know that that's a lot of verses to process, and so we're going to kind of dive into those individually now, but I wanted you to see the whole conversation in view first. And I think there's three things that we kind of see about how Nathanael responds to the change that is brought into his life. And the first one that we see is in verse 46. So Philip is called by Jesus. Jesus says, hey, follow me. And Philip says, got it. And then he, just like Jay talked about last week, immediately goes and tells one of his friends, hey, we've found the Messiah. You got to come meet him. It's Jesus from Nazareth. And Nathanael, he responds in verse 46, Nazareth? Can anything good come out of Nazareth? You know, that's like when you meet somebody and they're really cool and you're having a great time, and then all of a sudden you find out that like they graduated from the University of Texas, and you're like, whoa, hold on. Can anything good come out of the University of Texas? That's kind of the moment that Nathanael has right here. Sorry, I just saw somebody go, no. That was hilarious. I love it when y'all interact. That makes this so much more fun. So verse 46, he says, Nazareth, can anything good come out of Nazareth? And then we see the same kind of response that we did last week where it says, come and see. And the first way that Nathanael responds to the change that is presented to him is with rejection. He says, Nazareth, nothing good comes out of Nazareth. That can't be true. And there's a lot that we can tell about Nathanael from this text. There's some things that we can kind of deduce because Philip doesn't give a ton of context. He just says, hey, you know, the one that Moses wrote about, the one that the prophets talked about, I found him. And that's really all Philip says. And what that tells us about Nathanael is that he is also a student of the Old Testament. Because he didn't have to go, well, what did Moses say? What did the prophets say? Like refresh my memory. He understands what Philip is saying, who he is talking about, the fulfillment of the Old Testament prophecies. He gets it. And he says, but from Nazareth? No way, man. You got to be wrong. That can't be the guy. Philip says, come and see. But his first response is to reject. And then Philip tries again. He says, no, for real. Just come and see for yourself. And as they start to walk up to Jesus and the crowd of people that is with him, Jesus says of him to everyone and to Nathanael, he says, here is an Israelite in whom there is no deceit. And then Nathanael kind of stops and he goes, how do you know me? And at this point, you can tell, I mean, he's entering this next kind of category. The next way that we respond to change is with inspection, right? As soon as we move past the idea of rejecting the change brought to us, we move into this next phase of inspection, where we say, hold on, is this something that I need in my life? Is this true or is this not true? He says, how do you know me? But it's also worth mentioning in this that he doesn't give Jesus any type of like designation in his question. A lot of times when you see someone ask Jesus a question, they call him like rabbi or teacher, something like that. And Nathanael doesn't, because he is still kind of pushing into like this is not the right guy. And so when Jesus says, here's a true Israelite in whom there is nothing false, he just goes, how do you know who I am? And inspection is a wonderful thing. It is a necessary thing in the life of a believer. In youth, a couple of weeks ago, we're going through the book of Jude right now. And we talked about identifying false teachers and like inspecting what people say, measuring it against the truth of God's word, and determining whether it's worth listening to or not. Inspection is good and it's necessary, but it can also be really problematic because it is real easy to get hung up in the inspection phase. And when we do that, inspection turns into incarceration, and we just get stuck because we can't make a decision on what we actually believe. And when we get stuck in this inspection stage, we get so paralyzed by all the choices and all the variables and all the possible outcomes that we never move anywhere. And this is where the enemy does some of his best work. Because that's when we start to kind of lie to ourselves. We start to believe the lies that we tell to ourselves. And we say that we're just being thorough and we're doing our due diligence. But in reality, it's just a lack of faith to step into what God has for us. We say, no, I need to keep checking this out. Like, I know I feel a certain way here, but I need to really make sure this is what God has for me before I leave my job. I need to really make sure that this is what God wants me to do before I start this home group. I really need to spend some months in prayer over this thing right here before I take that step. And we start to use that inspection as an excuse to put off what we know God is calling us to do. And we feel justified in it. We feel puffed up. We're like, no, I'm doing the right thing. When in reality, we're just being deceived with an attitude of self-righteousness. Because we don't know, we don't believe that Jesus is actually going to be there when we take that step of faith. We want to see all the pieces put together, and then we'll step. And that's not faith. It doesn't take faith to walk when you can see the ground right in front of you. And God calls us to live a life of boldness and courage and faith. So we can't allow ourselves to get hung up in the inspection stage, because that's where we become stagnant. That's where we become ineffective. That's where we become deceived by ourselves. And there is no one better at lying to us than us. Because the things that we say in our head, nobody else hears. And so there's no one to point those things out unless you have a community to share them with, unless you're willing to open up about the real stuff in your life and not just the surface level stuff. The community that God has blessed us with, that's one of the ways that we fight getting trapped in the inspection stage of change. You talk about it. You process out loud with the body of believers around you, and then together you can come to a consensus of, is this biblical? Is this not? Is this what God is calling me to? We help each other get out of this mess of inspection turning into incarceration. But that's what we see here in verse 48 when he says, "How do you know me?" We see him starting to inspect, is this guy in front of me, is this Jesus of Nazareth the man that Moses actually wrote about? Is he the fulfillment of these prophecies? And we get to see a little glimpse of Nathanael starting to process all of these things. Continuing on, Jesus answered, he says, "I saw you when you were under the fig tree before Philip called you." And this is also a really interesting part of the verse, because there's kind of two views here. One is that Philip was actually sitting under a fig tree. The other is that this is a reference to like no less than 3 times in the Old Testament where a fig tree is actually referring to like someone's home or a place of safety and seclusion. Whichever one was intended here is irrelevant, because they are both, Jesus is saying, look, I saw you in a place where nobody else was. I saw you here when nobody else saw you. Before Philip ever got to you, I found you. And I think that's really, really cool. Because in here, in the text, it says that Philip found Nathanael, but I think it's worth noting that Jesus found him first. And sometimes this is one of the ways we get stuck in inspection, is we're like, I'm not prepared enough to share my faith. I'm not prepared enough to have this conversation with my friend Nathanael. And we put all of this weight on us, and we feel like we have to figure out all these steps and all these little pieces. That's not our role. Our role is to find Nathanael and tell him, and know that Jesus found him first. Jesus, when he calls you to step into something, has already gone ahead of you and started the groundwork that you're just now starting to stress out about. It's not our role to figure out all the little pieces. It's our role to take the step of obedience. And that's what we see next in verse 49, is a step into action. Because after Nathanael is presented with what Jesus says, I saw you when you were under the fig tree. I saw you when you were completely alone and no one else was anywhere around you. I saw you there. And then verse 49, Nathanael says, you are the Messiah. Rabbi, you are the Son of God. You are the King of Israel. And notice how he starts in verse 49. Rabbi, teacher. He gives him the designation of honor that he deserved all along, but he has just now come to the understanding that he deserves. And then he goes on even further to say, you are the Son of God. You are the fulfillment of the prophecy of Moses and all of the prophets. You're the guy I've been waiting for. And then he calls him King of Israel, which is also important because that, for Nathanael, an Israelite, is a statement of surrender. He's saying, you are the King of Israel. You are my king. I am subservient to you, Rabbi, Son of God. You are the boss of me now. And he steps into action through this declaration of who Jesus is. And those are the three places that we start to find ourselves whenever change steps up in our life. And none of them are necessarily bad. Right? Like sometimes it is okay to reject change in your life because not all change is from God. Not all change is good. Some opportunities need to have the door slammed on them and to be rejected and say, this is not true. Get out of here. Rejection can be the right option for change. Inspection is always good, to inspect a little bit. But as soon as you know the answer, you got to get out. As soon as God reveals to you, this is where you need to be, run like you're on fire. Well, you're supposed to stop, drop, and roll. I don't know. Run like you're supposed to run from something out of the inspection stage and move into the action stage. Don't just sit there and say, no, God, I really need you. I got to pray for 3 hours. If you prayed for 3 minutes and God gave you an answer, you're good. He's not going to change it up on you and be like, gotcha. Move out of the inspection stage into action. And there was a time before I was at Summit, I was unemployed for an entire year. And I was like applying at churches all over the place. I was living in Houston at the time. I'd applied at churches in Houston. I'd applied at churches like anywhere that was remotely like looking because I knew that God told me to quit my job. And so I left my job in Houston. And that was the plan. That's one of the times in my life that I can look back on and say that was a massive leap of faith. And I had no clue what was next. I talked to one church for 6 months, and then they were like, yeah, sorry, I don't think you're the right guy. I was like, cool, thanks. But all of that led me to working on rent houses for my uncle. And my friend Jake called me, and he said, hey, there's this church that's looking for a youth pastor. It's a part-time gig. I think you should call them and set up an interview. And I said, yeah, I'll pray about it. And I hung up the phone, and I said, I'm not doing that. I don't want a part-time youth pastor job. Like, this is my calling in life. And so I ignored him and just I rejected it, kept working on the rent houses for a few weeks. And then he calls me back and he's like, did you ever call that church that I told you about? I was like, dude, I don't want to. That's not for me. And he goes, I really think you should call. And so I was like, fine, whatever. I called just to get him off my back. And a dude named Chad Higgins picked up the phone. And if you've been around Summit, he used to be the campus pastor here before Jared is. And he was like, yeah, we could go, grab some food together. So we went to Panera. He caught a fly out of midair, and I was like, this dude is awesome. I don't know how he did it, but it was cool. And then we set up an interview like a few days later, and I got to meet the staff. They asked me a whole bunch of questions, and I left that interview one of, probably 20 that I had been in over the last year. And I got about 30 minutes away from the church. I was driving back to the lake because I had nowhere else to go. I had no job. And I called Chad on the phone, and I said, hey, I don't know if you're going to offer me this job or not, but I'm going to take it either way. Which is like really out of character for me. Like I'm normally not that, well, sometimes I'm that forward, but not always. Like in a moment like this, like that was not really the intent. And he goes, cool. I was going to call you and see if you wanted the job. I said, great, glad we're on the same page. I'll see you Monday. But like that was one of those moments where like I had rejected it initially. I'd gone into the inspection phase just to get Jake off my back, probably kind of the same way Nathanael did here, to get Philip off of his back with his come and see nonsense, right? And it's like, fine, I'll humor you. And I sat in that interview room and I said, this is the place that God needs me. Like this is not needs me. This is where he wants me to be, though. This is what he has for me. And as soon as I knew that, it was like, there's nothing that's going to stop me from being there. I don't care if you don't want me to have the job, hire somebody else, but I'm still going to be here. Because I knew that this was where God wanted me to be. And I took action. And thank God, he was also working in the hearts of the staff and Chad and was leading us all the same direction like only he can to put all the pieces together. And in the same way, we see Nathanael go from nothing good comes out of Nazareth to how do you know me to you are the Son of God, the King of Israel. And I think what's really cool about this is that nothing around Nathanael really changed. Like when he rejected to when he declared Jesus as the Messiah, like there wasn't this massive heavens parting, like craziness that happened. But what happened is that when he saw a clear picture of who Jesus was, everything within him changed. Nothing about his circumstance or his place of residence or his occupation. In that moment, he still had all the same things, but God changed everything within him. And he said, you are my king. Because he had a clear picture of who Jesus was. And once he saw that, nothing was going to stop him from taking action to follow Jesus wherever he went. And so I think the question that we need to ask ourselves today is, what change do you need to grab a hold of today? Before you leave this place, I would challenge you to answer that question to yourself. What is something that God has put in front of you? A change that needs to happen in your life that you need to grab a hold of. And you've been maybe sitting in the rejection stage of just, God, I'm not doing that. Maybe you've been trapped in the inspection stage of, I just need more information. I need to see more pieces in place before I go. But identify what it is that God is calling you to change today. Identify the desire that he has placed within your heart. Identify where you're at in that process. Rejection, inspection, or maybe you've stepped into action and this is a really encouraging moment for you and you're like, I just did that. That was me last week. Let's go! Like, that's awesome. We all find ourselves in all three of these categories from time to time. But identify where you're at, because from there, you can start to move forward. If you're going to reject whatever it is that's in front of you, if it's something that needs to be pushed aside, let it go and don't look back. If it's something that God is calling you to and you know it and you're just pushing against it because it's uncomfortable or you're scared of what other people in the church are going to think about you, grab a hold of what God has for you. Stop trying to get all the answers. It's not your job to do. Our job is to step into what God has for us. His job is to work out the how all of that is going to work out. He will take on the stress. He will take on the minutia. When you step in faith to what He is calling you into, He has already found you. He has already gone before you. He has already prepared the way so that you can do what He has called you to do. And so often we get stuck on change that needs to happen around us. We look at how broken the world is. We look at how broken our job is. We look at how broken our family is. And we get stuck there saying, how can I change these things? And this is what I want you to hear. It's going to come on the screen behind me. Change within you will prompt change around you. Change within you will prompt change around you. When you start to step into what God has for you, the things around you will be forced to change, not by your hand, but by the hand of God. And that's what happened for Nathanael. He had an internal change where he said, "You are the Son of God. You are the King of Israel. I surrender to your authority." And from that moment on, everything about his life changed. Where he went, who he hung out with, all of it. His life was never the same, but it started not by fixing all of these external things, but by allowing God to fix him internally. By meeting Jesus and surrendering to Him. That's the key point of all of this. If you want to see God change the stuff around you, maybe pause for a moment and ask Him, ask yourself, what needs to change within me? What do I need to let go of? Do I need to let go of fear? Do I need to let go of anxiety? Do I need to let go of a dream that I've had for so long because it doesn't honor what God has for my life? And allow Him to show you the change that needs to happen. And when you see it, when you hear Him tell you what it is, jump into it with both feet. Don't wait for all the pieces to come together. Take action. I think it's really cool what it says in verse 51. Jesus is speaking. It says, "He then added, I tell you the truth. You shall see heaven open and the angels of God ascending and descending on the Son of Man." There's something interesting about this verse. The you in the original text is plural. So up to this point in the conversation, he's been talking largely just to Nathanael. But in this verse, Jesus addresses the whole crowd. In the New Oklahoma version, instead of the New International Version, it would say, "Very truly, I tell you guys, y'all will see heaven open." Right, I don't know, that's probably not a better translation, but it might be more accurate in this moment because the you is plural. He's addressing the whole crowd. He says, you all will see heaven open. You all will see angels ascending and descending on the Son of Man. And what does that mean for us? It means that we have a connection through Jesus Christ directly to God. This is referencing a vision back in Genesis 28:12 that, again, an Old Testament student would have understood. And Jesus is looking at him and he's saying, I am the ladder. I am the connection between heaven and earth. I am the one that can give you everything you need. No more lambs, no more doves to be sacrificed. I am the one that can pay the price that you owe, and I will do it. And because of me, you can be connected to God the Father. That's the truth that we all need. Because without that, the rest of it's just a show. And for some of you in this room, that may be what you're fighting against. You may be just like Nathanael in the rejection or the inspection stage of God calling you nearer to him. But you know the truth is that God loves you. You know the truth that he sent his son to die for you. You know that that sacrifice Jesus made covers the mistakes that you will make in your life and have already made in your life. And you are still fighting against it. And my challenge for you this morning is to take that step of faith. Stop getting hung up in the inspection stage. Stop keeping Jesus as best you can at arm's length. And allow him to come into your life and change you. Because what's wild is when Jesus comes into your heart and he changes you from the inside out, that annoying coworker that you have to deal with, you start to see through the eyes of God. They may still be the worst, but you have been changed. And so from that, your attitude has changed towards them. And then you get to be the person to show them a clear picture of who God is. You get to be the person that God uses to change them from the inside out. Change within you will prompt change around you. As we go into these next few songs of worship, take some time to be a little introspective. Take some time to think about the change that has been in front of you, maybe for a long time, maybe just for a few days or even a few minutes. Start to think about where you fall in these three categories. And then step into whatever God is calling you to step into. Y'all bow your heads with me. Lord, I thank you for the time that we get to gather together. God, I thank you for the fact that you provide us with a community to do life with, to talk about life with, to discuss the hard things, the challenges and the changes in front of us. God, thank you for providing us people to walk alongside us here in this church. And God, thank you for walking alongside us. Lord, I pray for every single person in here that you give all of us the boldness and the courage necessary to move out of the inspection stage that we may be trapped in and to take the steps of action as you lead us. It's in Jesus' name I pray. Amen.